Hi, and welcome to episode 10 of the In Your PODcket video podcast. Take a minute and reflect on you. Hit the pause button if you'd like and think about who you are, how you walk, talk, the types of relationships that you have, and perhaps even where you find yourself situated geographically. Chances are a lot of who you are is associated with those who raised you. If you're like majority of Canadians, those are probably your parents. Now, with this fresh in your mind, who might you be if one of those people couldn't be there for you? This has, is, and will continue to be the unfortunate reality for some, so long as there's life on this planet. While loss shapes us to take different forms, the fact remains that we're malleable and resilient. We were always bound to assume different forms in our own pursuit of success, a term that my former mentor refers to as being an inside job. Mitch McMichael knows this intimately. He lost his father at a young age after battling leukemia. Mitch shares his experiences going through various life milestones, providing those who have walked in footprints similar to his perhaps a different perspective, while providing essentially an open letter for parents and children alike who haven't yet encountered this type of grief. I hope you enjoy becoming more familiar with former National Lacrosse League player Mitch McMichael and his story. My guest today is someone who I would say has probably lived more years than he has been alive. He's a former player in the National Lacrosse League, playing with the Washington Stealth, Vancouver Stealth, and the New England Black Wolves. He's an Ivy Leaguer, and I have no shame in saying that he's someone who has a much better proficiency with Microsoft Excel than myself. He's the son of a man who was inducted into the Ontario Lacrosse Hall of Fame as part of the class of 2017, and someone I'm proud to have on the show. Welcome to the In Your PODcket podcast, Mitch McMichael.
Thanks, Tim. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming on and mixing it up with me. Maybe it's because we go back such a long way, but your story in particular is one that, if I'm honest with myself, I catch myself thinking about from time to time. I hope that by sharing it, it proves that, well, I guess to be a tremendous resource for those who are either struggling now or have yet to struggle like you and others like you have. With that, I really appreciate you coming on and talking about this.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, if there's anything you can that we can help with people. I mean, there's so much around mental health today, right? Like there's people dealing with things internally, and I think this is one of the things that people just don't talk enough about. So happy to talk about it with you.
For sure. As a financial planner, part of my job is to address risk. And one of those risks is premature death, which nearly everyone thinks won't happen, but unfortunately, it's very much a reality, and one that you're pretty familiar with yourself. Before we get into knowing your story a little bit better, your dad was very well known by most in the sporting world.
Yeah.
Can you tell the listeners who you knew him to be and how you remember him?
Yeah, it's kind of funny, right? I mean, a lot of what I know about my dad was true stories, right? Because so he passed away from leukemia when I was about 8 years old. I think he was initially diagnosed a couple of years before he passed away, but he was a lacrosse hockey guy. He captain of the Portland Winterhawks in the WHL, was picked up by the Philadelphia Flyers. But didn't quite make it into the NHL in '88, the year I was born. But I think is more well known for his lacrosse, and as you said, inducted into the Hall of Fame, which was an unbelievable honor, great weekend. But he was a tough guy. When you think of guys in hockey like Bob Probert, and there's stories of him and Bob Probert maybe possibly having a fight in training camp when he was with the Flyers. But he was a tough guy, and if you look at any of the interviews of people talking about him, he made one that always sticks in my mind is that he made everyone a couple inches taller. that he played with, right? Because they knew that, you know, with him on the team, you wouldn't have to worry about anybody messing with the top guys on his team, because he was always there to protect them and make sure nobody messed around. But you know, honestly, to be honest, Tim, like, I don't have a whole lot of actual memories of my dad, and it sucks. But you know, the ones I do have of him are you know, incredibly special. So you know, one of the ones that I'll always remember is in between lacrosse games when my dad was playing for the Brooklyn Redmen. You know, you're an athlete. A lot of people listening are athletes. You know, in between periods when you're playing, you go into the room, coach has a chat with you. That's your downtime. Relax, get some water, grab a snack, whatever it is, stretch it out a bit, roll out. You know, that's what I did when I was playing, right? Is it's your downtime to relax, catch your breath, think about what went on, what you're going to do in the next quarter or whatnot. One of my best memories is in between periods, my dad wouldn't be in the locker room. He would be out on the floor with me playing pass in between periods. Playing with pass with my brother, you know, with me, throwing the ball around, just a little extra time that he could have with the two of us. And, you know, it's just after you're like, at the time you're thinking it's just, oh, I'm playing catch with my dad kind of thing. It's not big of a deal. But now, you know, growing up after I was playing, it's like he wasn't in there with the locker room taking his time with the team. He wanted to spend that time with us out on the floor. And, you know, my son is only, you know, he's turning 3 in about a month from now. And, you know, I wish I was still playing, because I think it's so cool to be able to show your kids, you know, that you can play and that you can kind of hack it around on the floor and that you were an athlete. Because, you know, Lachlan came to one game, one of my last games that I played, and it was just such a cool experience to know that he was there, and he was only a baby, but he'll never remember it. We have one picture and that's about it. But really, really cool to have him there. So.
Yeah, exactly. You probably tell him that you scored 5 goals and gone to 5 fights too.
Yeah. Probably won two of 20 face-offs, got burned for a couple of goals, had 2 shots that completely missing that. So
yeah. Fair. All right. So I think what I'd like to do is perhaps jump forward in the time scale here, and then kind of jump back and then work our way forward. So
yeah.
I've said this many times, like, I'm not a mental health expert by any means, but I think there seems to be a fair amount of academic literature out there that suggests that what might be going through a child's mind at various points following a loss. And I'm not aware of any easily digestible firsthand accounts from the child's perspective. And I could be very well off here, but how do you think your dad's passing ultimately impacted you growing up?
Yeah, no, I think it's funny. I never thought about it, to be honest, until you gave me a call initially. And I think, you know, the conversation, and that's why I think it's super important. Like, just talking about it, right? It's, you know, after you and I had that initial, I think we were on the phone for over an hour. You know, and it was, I've never talked about a lot of those things, and I've never actually had that realization. But, you know, in the first couple of years when my dad passed away, I mean, I didn't really know what was going on. Like, I remember, you know, when my mom told me where we were, how I reacted. You know, a lot of the memories I have is going into the hospital and visiting him. You know, funny story, you know how you usually, if you're visiting someone in the hospital, you walk in the front door and they have their names on it, right? You know, it'd be Scott McMichael or you know, Mitch McMichael, whatever. He would take it out and you would put like Wayne Gretzky, or you put like Bugs Bunny or something like that, right? To make us chuckle, which I thought was awesome. But, you know, in the first couple of years, I don't think I, you know, had a full, you know, real realization of what was going on. I think I was so young. But it wasn't, it's just, it kind of just creeps around on you. And, you know, as a kid, it was always, you know, my mom and me and my brother for the first little bit. And, you know, she was unbelievable. She'd be the dad and the mom. So yeah, I mean, you probably remember hockey, you know, going to hockey practice and stuff like that, right? Like, I would get, you know, Dirksy to drop me off, and he would always pick me up and take me to hockey practice. My mom was working, right? So she would meet us at the rink after, or come halfway through practice because she had to work, and then pick me up, right? So it's incredibly, realizing that now, I have a much better appreciation for that aspect of what she did. But I mean, as a kid, like, as you're growing up, there's certain milestones that, you know, it's not like you think about them at breakfast kind of thing, right? It's, you think about them in certain situations, that that's the tough parts. So graduating from high school, right? Getting your driver's license, like those milestone types of things, that's when it's the toughest for sure. Because you're just like, man, like it just sucks. And that's just, it's life and it sucks. And, it'd be awesome if he was there when Lachlan was born, when we were, when my wife and I got married, you know what I mean? Like and I have, my stepdad is awesome. He's a great dude. We've always gotten along. He's definitely been a father-like figure, but it's different when it's not, it's not the guy. So I think it's important for the parent that's still around is to tell the kid that he or she will be okay. Right. And to make it, to respect what happened, obviously to talk about it, to talk through, don't forget about it, don't ignore it. But just to make it a little bit more common, right? Things like this, people lose parents all the time, and it sucks. It's miserable. It's not right. It's not fair. But at the same time, you can't just give up, right? You can't just give up on your life. You can't give up on your future, especially as a young kid. Like, you don't know what you're capable of yet. You haven't had the opportunity to grow and to progress as a person. I think it's the responsibility of the parent that's still around to have that conversation, to talk to the kid and just let them know that the kids will be all right. You know what I mean? Like, these things happen, and you're going to get through it, but it's important to talk to them about it, and to shed light on the important things that would happen while that parent was still around, right? To remember the good stuff, to remember the memories, and to keep that memory around, to talk about them, and to pass on the similar life lessons that they would have if they were still around. I think it's a detriment to try to just completely move on. And I think that's been my issue, right, growing up. And I think it's starting to affect me more now that I'm almost numb to loss, because I think I didn't talk about it enough growing up. And the way I deal with loss, or the way I deal with hardship now, is as I think molded me because of what happened. I think I self-realized as a kid that bad shit happens all the time, whether it's losing a friend, losing a family member, whether it's an injury, whether it's not making a team. It's all these things happen throughout your life. And I think a lot of my success and that I've somewhat achieved, and I'm nowhere near what I envisioned I would be, but I think I'm happy with where we are. I have a great wife, great family, a good solid job. I had a pretty good playing career. Athletically, I went to a good school. I've met great people. To me, it's I've had a good life so far, and I think a lot of that has been shaped by the loss of my dad early on. It taught me how to deal with hardship, how to deal with disappointment and loss, because it forces you to grow up a little quicker. It forces you to, as I said before, it's we would get dropped off by our coach at hockey practice. My mom would come pick me up. It's a lot of alone time, right? It's a lot of and I like my alone time now, where it's just me, because a lot of the time that's how it was. Not necessarily growing up, I wasn't neglected by any means, but you had to kind of figure shit out for yourself. So as much as there is, much as it sucks to lose a parent, I think it's helped me, deal with things throughout life a little bit differently. And to me, it's my way of dealing with things. And I'm not saying it's the right way. I'm not saying everyone else should be dealing with it like that. But when something hard in my life happens, whether it's a loss or whether it's, my multiple knee surgeries, it's, I get pissed off and I'm upset, and I'm really upset about it for the first little bit, but then I wake up the next day and it's back to normal. Let's get back to focusing on everyday life and what you need to do to kind of, just get back on track. So I think without going through that as a young kid, I don't think I would be dealing with hardship the same way. So, I guess that's one of the good things that came out of it.
Yeah, you're right. And a lot of things that you mentioned too is, there's a lot of applications in sport, frustration, disappointment, loss, like all those things are things that athletes experience on their playing field. So for me, being a former golfer, getting out on the course was pretty therapeutic, right, in that I could escape some of the realities of life. Now, did you have in when you became a little bit older, a similar sense when you were on the field or the court?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, lacrosse especially it's the creator's game, right? It's rooted in Native American history. It's funny, I watched a cool clip this morning of Lyle Thompson. I think it was just a 4-minute clip of how, when a lot of that Native American community plays lacrosse, they're not playing to win. They're playing for the entertainment of the creator. Okay. So whether you win or lose, that you've done your job to the creator to entertain them, to heal yourself, to get away from normal life. I mean, I couldn't imagine my life without lacrosse because of that point, not because of the Ivy League championships I won, or the championships growing up that I won, or the NLL almost winning an NLL championship, or the Final Fours that I was in. It's the biggest thing for me is it was an outlet to get one frustration out, right? I use it big time. Whenever I get super pissed off at school, I remember I would just head out, go to the field, turn the lights on, grab 300 balls and shoot them as hard as I possibly could at the net until I was too tired to lift my arms up. That was my outlet, 100%, is when I got my helmet on, when I was out on the floor, I only thought about lacrosse, and that was it. And it was a fantastic outlet to whatever was going on in my life. And it's not even the games, right? It's more so the practicing, the training, and just putting on your headphones and going out to hit the wall, throwing the ball against the wall for an hour. It's, training and trying to get stronger and better to obviously win for your team, for your teammates. But, it's such a therapeutic game because of all aspects that go into it. It's the camaraderie with your teammates and the relationships that you make there. It's the personal development. It's, how to win, it's how to lose. You learn so much through sport, and it's so important. And the game is just, you don't have words for it, right? Like you miss it so much when you're not playing, it's hard to deal with, right? And I've been out of the game for a couple of years now, and it's difficult to find something to fill that void. You don't have that outlet anymore. It's it's your job, it's your family, it's eat, sleep, bed, repeat. You know what I mean? It's a very difficult thing to overcome and deal with. But I mean, it's still a huge part of my life. My stick is always within arm's length from me. It's whether it's downstairs in the basement or just picking it up, grabbing a ball, or the next phase for me is obviously going to be teaching Lachlan how to play. And I can't wait to coach. And I don't care if it's lacrosse, hockey, ballet, or whatever it is, right? Whatever he wants to do. I can't wait to get involved again, and help him, appreciate whatever he's doing, in the way that I appreciate lacrosse, and the way I used it as an outlet, and the way I used it to better myself and to help other kids, and just use whatever that is, whether it's art, whether it's science, whether it's music. It won't be music because I don't have a musical bone in my body, so there's no way he does. But just appreciating that outlet and using it the way I used it. I think that's the biggest thing I'm going to be able to teach him.
Yeah, athletics gives us a lot of opportunities, and I think that it's all embedded in, I guess, every athlete, some more so than others, but just to give back to others that maybe are apt to experiencing what sport has to offer, or maybe like you just said, it's in other avenues as well. So part of your journey is the fact that with lacrosse, it gave you, I guess, it gave you an opportunity that very few in Canada get to experience, and that being becoming a student athlete in the US, but not just to any college. Can you talk about your journey leading up to what is now your alma mater?
Yeah. Oh man, that's a long journey. So
maybe the Coles notes.
Yeah, I'll give you a quick one. So I did my 4 years of high school in Canada.
Yep.
after that, I was playing in the Canadian National Field Lacrosse Championship for Team Ontario. I ended up talking to Dartmouth College, the coach there. He said, "Hey, love you to play. Go write your SATs. Let's see if we can get you in." Wrote it once, had no idea what it was, didn't study for it, nothing, never even heard of it. Just showed up, wrote the test, didn't do too hot, obviously. So skipped that. I ended up at Salisbury School. So it's a private school in Connecticut. Went there for 2 years. So I actually did 6 years of high school. So did 2 years at the Salisbury School. Once I got there, coach met me, saw me play. And he said, "No, you're not going to Dartmouth. You're going to go to Cornell instead." So at that point, I've never even heard of Cornell. So I said, "Sure, are they better at lacrosse?" And he said, "Yep, they're much better." I go, "Are they good academically like Dartmouth?" They go, "Yep, same Ivy League, all good." I go, "Okay, get me in." So the coaches at Cornell at the time were Jeff Tambroni and Ben DeLuca. And I don't think they even saw me play until I was fully committed to go to Cornell. So my coach at Salisbury, Bobby Wynn, used to play with Coach Tambroni at Hobart, and so I got into Cornell lacrosse wise. Academically, I was fine to get in. SAT scores were okay, but I got in based on his word. So the coaches didn't even see me play. Had a couple of conversations with me. Coach Wynn called Coach Tambroni, said, "Hey, I got a guy. He'd be a perfect fit. Trust me on this one." And that's how I got into Cornell. Yeah.
Wow, that's wild.
Yeah, pretty crazy. Yeah.
No kidding. Yeah, I think most people hear of an Ivy Leaguer and think of maybe like, I don't know, if they watch The Social Network, like the next generation of great minds. But I know that a lot of great lacrosse players also come from there. So like on the surface, I think it's a little odd, I guess, transitioning. If I look at the sport, because college lacrosse is field, right? And then you transition to box. So can you talk a little bit about like that aspect of the sport? How different is it actually?
It's very different.
Yeah.
Very, very different. I think for Canadians stepping onto the field to play field lacrosse is a lot easier than Americans stepping into box lacrosse.
Right.
The biggest downfall, honestly, for a lot of Canadians is just pure athleticism. Like I didn't lift a weight until the summer before I went to Cornell.
Really?
My diet, oh no, my diet was tragic. I would have bacon sandwich for breakfast, poutine for lunch, and a Coke, and whatever my mom made for dinner. Before I went to Cornell, and I never lifted a weight. I mean, I just played every sport I could at whatever, all the time, whatever it was. Right? I didn't go for runs really. I didn't wasn't doing hill sprints like I did, after Cornell. But it's my time spent at South. So when I got to Cornell my freshman year, I actually was on the second line midfield, and in college lacrosse, the first two lines are the only ones that play. So I was a freshman on the second line midfield, and I also played on the man up. And I think the only reason why I was able to do that is because of the time I spent at Salisbury, learning the field lacrosse game, learning the American way of playing field lacrosse. And lucky enough for me, I mean, the same terminology that we used at Salisbury is the exact same terminology that we used at Cornell, because Bobby Wynn, coach of Salisbury, used to coach at Cornell as well. So all of our terms, all of our language, the communication, all the slide packages, the defensive schemes, the offensive schemes, everything was the same terminology. So I already had a leg up on a lot of the guys, a lot of the freshmen going into it. But it was so the transition from box to field was a little bit easier for me because I had that time at Salisbury.
Mm-hmm. And what about when you transitioned back to box through the NLL? Like, how did that happen?
Yeah, so that was interesting. So when I got to Cornell, my freshman year, after my freshman summer, I went back and played junior lacrosse in Whitby. I think that 3 games in was when I tore my ACL the first time. So I didn't play the rest of that season. The year after that, I think I played most of it. And then I didn't play indoor lacrosse for my last 2 years while I was at Cornell. Yeah. One summer I was out in New York doing an internship at a fixed income brokerage. And then another summer I was actually I was at the London School of Economics in London, taking my finance course. So when it came for the NLL in my draft year, I didn't actually get drafted. I was undrafted going to the NLL. And up to that point, I mean, I was one of the top guys in my age group. I was captain of my junior A team. So I was, I should probably, if I kept with it, I think I would have been drafted. But yeah, I wasn't drafted into the NLL. So I just called up the GM, Doug Locker at the time for the Washington Stealth, and said, hey, do you mind if I get a tryout? And yeah, sure, come on in. And then, kind of the rest is history. Was able to get a turn on a roster spot that first year. So.
No kidding. Now, okay, I don't want to press the fast forward button on your professional career, but as so many before you, and as you alluded to, like injuries played a big part. In your case, I can only assume that lacrosse wasn't just part of who you were, but it's how your dad was remembered by a lot of people and how others learned about him. So I'm curious to know if that weighed on your mind when you got closer to your retirement at all.
Mm-hmm. No, I don't think so. Okay. I don't think so. I mean, me stopping playing lacrosse was a little bit forced. I mean, my last game was, I retore my one ACL, partially tore it my last game. But I mean, at that point, I was playing in the summer league, which is same guys the NLL, just spread across more teams. So I mean, at that point, I was on my way out. I mean, it just 3 knee surgeries. My body was kind of was struggling a bit, and then the league just got better, right? I mean, it sucks to admit it, but I probably wasn't good enough to get a spot on some teams. So the way I left the sport was a little disappointing. It kind of wasn't on my own terms, which is a bit hard to deal with. I mean, my last game was absolutely tragic. It was game 7. I was playing for Brooklyn in the MLS, the MSL, and I was going up face-offs against Jake Withers, who is probably the best face-off guy in the game right now. And it's the first time in my entire career I didn't win a single face-off. I think I was 0 for 24. So I got absolutely rinsed by this guy. So didn't win a single face-off. Didn't do enough for us to obviously win because we lost the game. And last play, literally my last shift of the game, was when I retore my ACL. So, I mean, that was tough. I mean, I remember sitting out there after the game, and I was sitting outside, and I just got all my gear off. I was just by myself thinking, like, that's it, right? I mean, that's 30 years of lacrosse. That's been, pretty much my entire life. And, I'm done as a player. I mean, that was tough. That was tough sitting there by myself. I mean, pretty much broke down. But again, I mean, it was one night of feeling like shit and breaking down. The next day is okay. I got to focus on my career. I got to focus on Lachlan, the kid, and raising him the proper way and teaching him everything I know and more, so he can become a better version of me. Right. I mean, that's every parent's goal is to make sure that their kid has every opportunity to do better than their parent. And that's all I try to do, right, is to teach them and give him as much structure and fun in his life as I possibly can, and give him every opportunity that he's too young now to give him much, but just to get him, put him in a position where he's going to be able to succeed and just be a good person. I mean, I think that's super important. And lacrosse taught me that, right? Is, a couple of the things that like stick out of my mind from Cornell is leave it better than you found it. It's something our coach used to always say. And then our strength and conditioning, I say this all the time, is be comfortable with being uncomfortable. So, people at work always say, this is too much. Like, we have too much on your plate. It's like, no, this is easy, man. Like in Cornell, it was having a 40-hour a week job playing lacrosse, if not more. On top of that, having a challenging education, Ivy League education to keep up with. Having to juggle that, I'll never be challenged more than I did at Cornell. So, I mean, another thing sports give you is you have to put so much time into sport to be good enough to excel and to be good at it. But that's only a portion of your life. I mean, you still have to balance. It forces you to balance your schoolwork at the time, your social life, which a lot of people in college, especially in the US, if you're not an athlete, you don't have to deal with those types of stresses, right? So, I mean, if I was ever to start my own company, I mean, if I have someone who is an athlete and somebody who isn't, I'm taking the athlete 10 times out of 10, because I know what they've gone through. I know the stresses and the time management that they've had to deal with. Yeah.
I think that's what you're describing here pretty much bottles up the life of the competitor, right? And why our feelings of, I guess, our highs feel so amazing, and then the lows do some pretty crazy things to us mentally.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I mean, my just one point on that. I mean, it's funny. I like winning. I enjoy winning. I always want to win at whatever I'm doing. But my biggest thing I think that sport taught me is that I hate losing at whatever I do. I hate losing more than I like winning. So whatever I'm doing, and we talked about this earlier about me not playing, not having a sport anymore. I miss the competitive portion of sport. Obviously I miss the camaraderie of the guys in the room and your coaches and the interactions you have, but um, the feeling of beating somebody at something is, you don't get that in real life. You know what I mean? You get it a bit in your job, I guess, but it's not like that instantaneous, the buzzer goes, you win by a couple goals. You don't get that feeling, right? So like I find myself, I try to beat somebody at everything, no matter what it is. Like walking up the stairs, if there's somebody in front of me, I'll walk up faster so I beat them to the top. I went on a bike ride this morning, climbing a hill. I saw a guy who was, I don't know, 300 meters ahead of me, right? It's just like, well, there's the guy I got to beat. So I beat him to the top, right? It's ingrained. That's the biggest thing I miss with sport is beating somebody at something. And I try to find that wherever I go, whatever I'm doing. I'm building a deck with my father-in-law. I try to put in the screw faster than him. Like it's insane. It's I don't even know if it's healthy or not, but that's the thing I miss the most and how I'm wired. So.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the things that make us tick, I guess.
Yeah.
You have a story that I have to admit choked me up pretty good, following your life after lacrosse. Can you take us back to your wedding day and share with the listeners, what that story was?
Yeah, that was that's one of those moments again, right? Before I tell it, I think one thing I do want to say, if you're a parent and you've lost your spouse and you have kids, I think the best thing to do is prepare them for those milestones by telling them it's going to be hard. So if you have a kid who's graduating from high school, right? Before they go up on that stage or before you get to the school of the ceremony, tell them, it sucks. Your dad, your mom is not here. This thought is going to go through your head when you get up there that you're going to miss them. You're going to want to see them. It's going to be tough. So have that conversation so the kid isn't surprised by it. Because the story I'm going to tell and the one you're referencing to, I was surprised by it big time, and it was upsetting, right? It was one of those moments where it sucks. So on our wedding day, I'm walking up to my spot, the front of everything, and everyone's sitting down, everyone's there, mom's there, stepdad's there, grandma, everyone. And so I get up there and I'm standing up there, and as soon as I turn around to face the crowd, right in the front seat, right beside my mom, there's a sign that says, "For those who can't be here with us today." Like this seat is reserved for those who can't be here with us today. Even talked about it now, it gets me a little choked, but it's just like, fuck, man, like it sucks, right? Because one of the happiest days of your life, and you want the people who raised you and who are your biggest supporters, your biggest fans, you want them there to see your successes, right? And turning around, and I had no idea my mom was going to do that. But seeing that, and if I was prepared for it, if I knew she was going to do it, I think it would be like, oh, it's such a great idea, thank you for doing it. And as soon as I saw it, I would have been pretty happy about it. But the surprise of it and seeing it, that's when it really hit. And I mean, to be honest, I had to turn around because I didn't want I didn't want anybody to see me kind of choked up like that. But that was a really kind of like a double-edged sword. Like it's a great moment that people think of you in that situation, that they care about you so much that they want you to know that this person is here in spirit for you. But at the same time, where my mind went was frustration and like why should a parent grow up without their spouse, right? Why should me as a husband ever have to go through life raising a child without my wife? Why should a kid ever have to grow up without a parent? Like their father, their mother. It's very different, right? And as I said before, I have a great stepdad. My mom and him aren't married, but I've always, for the most part, I've always called him my stepdad because he teaches me father-like things, right? Him and I have conversations that my mom and I don't have. But at the same time, and he's never ever tried to replace him. He's never tried to be that father figure. That's the way our relationship has been. It's been fantastic. But it's not the same. So, when I saw that sign, it was just like, awesome that my mom would think to do something like that. But at the same time, it was like, fuck, man, like, it sucks. And, you just have to deal with it, right? It's just things happen. And when bad things happen, the first thing I think of is I'm not the only one that's happened to, right? Millions of people have lost their fathers or lost their moms at a young age. Millions of people have lost their kids, and everyone deals with it differently. And you can deal with it one of two ways. You can use it as an excuse to be a bad person and to not do the right thing, or you can use it as a teaching moment to learn how to grieve with loss, to learn how to overcome obstacles, learn how to overcome disappointment. That's how I've chosen to deal with it. Now, at the same time, I don't probably show enough emotion as what I should. I don't talk about it. I don't like talking about it. I don't like talking about loss. I hate hospitals. I hate funerals. Everyone does, but I personally, I hate it because it brings up, those types of situations of me seeing that sign in the front row of our wedding. It goes back to me seeing an empty chair beside my mom at my graduation from Cornell, right? I don't like feeling like that, so I try to avoid as much as possible. That's probably not the best way to deal with it, but that's the way that's worked for me. No, it's a good story. It's a good kind of moment to talk about. So, thanks for bringing that up.
Well, I'm glad you bought me a little bit of time here. I gotta get the tears out of my eyes here, but you talk about, like, I guess you reference your kind of where you are mentally right now. And looking back on all of this as we kind of talk about it, like your dad's passing, your playing career, transforming from the life of an athlete, and now to you being a family man, are you comfortable talking about like where you are mentally in terms of like, do you find yourself having questions about like this particular place in life that you find yourself in?
Yeah, I'm fine talking about it. I mean, I don't know how much there is to really say, but I mean, it's it's different. It puts a new perspective on how I would deal with what my dad went through. So hypothetical situation. So I learned that, when my dad was sick, he got did all the blood transfusions and stuff. When he was initially sick, he actually got better enough to come back and play. So he came back and played for, I think, a year of lacrosse. And then, leukemia came back. And so he had a choice to make of, and this is my opinion. And I don't know if it's the right one, or this is just how I think about it is, he had a choice that he could either live with being sick for a longer period of time or try a procedure that had a higher risk of him passing away. So he could have been sick for a long period of time, been around, seen some of the things of me graduating, seen some of the milestones possibly, or he could try to get a full bill of health by doing a riskier procedure that could end up in him passing away. Obviously, it ended up with him dying. And, I remember specifically talking to my mom, I don't know how many years ago, I think maybe when I was at Cornell. And I said, yeah, 100%, I would have picked the same choice he did. Right? I don't want to go through life feeling sick and like, why would I do that? Like, I want to get back to the way I used to be. I want to get back to real life. I would take that risk. Now that I'm a dad, I would never, ever, ever think about that. I would be sick and handicapped as long as I was mentally okay. I would be around for as long as I possibly can for our son. So, at this stage in my life, in our life, I have a much different perspective on things now. especially being a dad and me losing my dad at a young age, I would never, ever, if I had a choice, I would never put, our son through that. If I had a choice of being, a little bit more miserable, physically weak, being sick all the time, dealing with hundreds and hundreds of doctor's appointments, if it was that or a risk where I could not be around for him, I would be sick for the rest of my life to spend time with him, to be around, and just to be there, and not necessarily if I'm not physically or mentally capable of teaching something or doing something for him, but just being there physically, I think is enough that I would make that choice. So, the perspective on things now that I've gone through it, and now that I'm a dad, are very, very different than what it was 10 years ago, for sure. So now dealing with the aspect from not being a lacrosse player anymore, I mean, that's been one of the most challenging things in my life, 100%. I don't wake up thinking about training for lacrosse anymore. I don't have that that drive, that goal always, right? When you're an athlete, you want to win. You want to win the championship, whatever it is. You want to win the Stanley Cup. You want to win Lombardi Trophy, the Champions Cup in lacrosse, whatever it is, national championship in college. You don't have that goal anymore, and you have to find the replacement. You have to find that competitive something to drive that, and I haven't found it yet. I mean, I find it in little spurts, but it's not a continuous thing, and it's been a struggle. And I've noticed it on my mental aspect. I mean, I get angrier easier now. My wife will easily attest to this, right? Like I have a bit of a shitty attitude about things sometimes. And I'm not the same person as I was when I was playing lacrosse. And it sucks, but it's kind of how I've been feeling lately, for sure. It's a big void that you have to figure out how to fill, or else it's going to impact not only you but your relationship with your spouse or your family or whoever it is, right? It's a struggle. It's tough, and it can be anything for people. For me, it was lacrosse, right? Me not having lacrosse in my life anymore, it was my big trigger. And it could be anything for people. It could be losing a job. It could be, making a financial investment in something and missing on it, right? It could be anything. And you have to learn how to overcome it. You have to talk to people about it. I don't talk to anybody about it, right? At all. And that's on me. That's my fault. I need to find somebody in an outlet to have these conversations with. So I think it's important to talk about it and how you're feeling, how you're dealing with it.
So on that note, Mitch, I'm big on the concept or the notion of, identifying or recognizing your authentic self. Mm-hmm. I guess for you, if you could go back and be alongside your younger self obviously when you're growing up, knowing how you felt or are feeling right now, is there any words of wisdom, or what would you do to help you maybe perhaps better navigate in recognizing or identifying, I guess, a path that would lead you to becoming your authentic self?
Yeah. I think one of the things I would have changed is it's probably too late now, but I mean, I would focus on having conversations with people outside of my family, right? Because I didn't talk about this type of stuff with anyone ever. For the most part, little conversations here and there with my mom. That's about it, right? It's you have to find an outlet. I think it's important outside of your family to talk to somebody about it. Athletically, I think I would have had a much better diet, growing up. I would focus on, finding a better balance. I definitely wouldn't waste as much time as I did, only focusing on lacrosse. So one of the bigger reasons why I did kind of stop playing lacrosse, even though I stopped playing long before I wanted to, and I retired, I guess, before I was kind of forced into it. I did it so I could focus on my actual career, because lacrosse sport is going to end at some point. I had that realization way too late in my life. I think that if you are an athlete, and you have to find the balance of making sure that you think about what's going to happen after sport. A lot of you read about it with a lot of hockey players, right? I mean, that's one thing I hear is a lot of hockey players, once they're done hockey, they don't know what to do. They've done nothing up to that point but hockey, but sport. When I was playing in the NLL, I was working from home at Vancouver. My job at the time was very not demanding at all. I could maybe work 20 hours, 15 hours a week. And as soon as I was done working, I would go right to lacrosse. I would go shoot, or I'd go do footwork or whatever it was, right? What I should have been doing is getting my MBA, my CFA, my CPA, doing something like that, networking more. I should have been focusing more on my life after lacrosse while I was still an athlete, as opposed to now I'm kind of playing catch up a bit, right? So, if I were to think of where I wanted to be as of 33 years old, I think I'd want to be a little bit further ahead in my professional career than I am right now. I think a lot of that is just I wasted a lot of time, doing stuff that wasn't helpful to my career at all. Right? It was either playing lacrosse, working out, or it was, watching stupid movies and TV. Whether it was playing video games, whether it was, I'm not saying those things aren't important as an outlet. But you have to find the right balance. And I think if I could go back and tell my younger self something, it'd be one, having a little bit more conversations with other people about deeper things instead of just, superfluous conversations of, what's going on in sports or what's going on socially. Having deep conversations with somebody. And two is finding a better balance of not narrowing in on one thing, whether it's sport or whether it's something else, is finding a balance of realizing that sport does end one day, and you have to set yourself up while you're playing, because when you're done playing, it's too late at that point. You're a little late in your career. It's you gotta be thinking about these things beforehand.
Yeah, that's kind of one of the dualities of being a competitor. You don't really have the benefit of foresight, and I think everything when you're in that mentality is geared towards producing a result right then and there, right?
Yeah, 100%.
So as we wind down here, Mitch, would you like to offer any other thoughts to maybe the kids or parents who are going through or might have already gone through in the past, like some of the same things you did?
Yeah, I think, the one thing I would really point out is if you're in the situation where you've lost a spouse or something like that, right, is focus on the kids, right? One, it takes your mind off the loss, right? And I know it's important for, heaven forbid, if anything ever happened to my wife, I'd be a wreck. But what the first thing I would do, and that's because I've learned this through what happened to me and through hardships in my life, is I need to focus my attention and what I'm doing on something different. And that would be your kid. And everyone's going to say the same thing, and everyone's probably thinking they're doing it, but it's being there and providing them the stability and the structure and the reassurance that they're going to be okay. Because I think a lot of what happens is if the kids don't talk about it and know that and are told that they're going to be okay, and that this happens to a lot of people in the world, it's nothing new. It's a common thing. It sucks. Realize that it's brutal and it shouldn't have happened and it's unfortunate, but people go through it all the time. Show them examples of successful people who grew up through hardship. Show them, read them things about about kids who grew up without any parents, and maybe in low impoverished third world countries who have become successful people. Show them examples of success. Reassure them that everything will be okay. You're gonna grow up just fine. Whatever you want to do, you can still do it. Nothing has changed. The only thing that's changed is you have one person who's looking out for you, who's going to do the job of two people instead of two people doing it. I'm not saying minimize it and to forget about it, but just use it as like a learning opportunity and something to to use when they're going through a hardship, right? And like similar to how I use it, right? Is things happen in life, and they're going to happen over and over and over again. You're going to get tripped. You're going to fall down. Everyone's going to get up, but the important thing is get up quick and get moving again, right? So for those parents, it's obviously they're going to be focusing on the kids, but reassure them, prepare them for certain situations that's going to happen, those graduations, those milestones, because that's when it's the hardest. It's not having breakfast with just you and your kid. That's you're just going to figure that out. It's going to be fine. But it's those situations where where it's important to have your parents there, those are the times it's going to be the toughest on the kids. So prepare them for that. Because when you're caught off guard, it sometimes can take a lot longer for that kid to get over it, right? If you're expecting, if you're surprised by how you feel when you don't see your dad or your mom there, it might not just be a moment of struggle or weakness or anger or sadness. That could, linger on for months, years, right? Everyone deals with it differently. So if you as a parent can prepare your kid for those types of situations, reassure them they're going to be okay. You're going to be successful whenever you do. Don't use this as an excuse to fail or to act up, right? I think that's the biggest thing that I would kind of pass down to people. Not saying it's right or wrong, but I wish I was told maybe a couple of those things when I was going through some stuff. So
yeah, that's the entire I guess the premise of this podcast is just to allow people who maybe see footprints out in front of them, like understand, how those things came to be, and those people who did make those footsteps, like how can they benefit from learning from the life experiences of someone like yourself? And
yeah,
I mean, for that, Mitch, like I can't thank you enough for coming on here. Like I said before in the opening of the show here, I think this is going to be a tremendous resource for people who, have, unfortunately been put in the life situation similar to yourself. But again, hopefully this would be a great resource for them. And so I do appreciate you coming on here and sharing your story and talking about this stuff.
Yeah, well, no, I think, I appreciate you more for asking me, because as I said before, my biggest pitfall is I don't talk about this stuff with a whole lot of people. And, you and I don't know, when was the last time we saw each other? We saw each other at Oshawa Golf Club for maybe 45 seconds. That was the first time I've seen or talked to you. And since we were probably 10 or 12 years old.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So, I mean, this is what I'm talking about to people, right? Find somebody who's outside of your inner circle, because surprisingly, having conversations like this is easier to have with, I'm not saying you're a stranger, but easier to have with people you're not around all the time.
Yeah.
Because, it's just, I don't know why it's easier, but I think it is. So, if anybody's listening who's going through something like this, or anybody, Tim, or anybody you talk to, if they need somebody who they don't know to talk to about this stuff, you have my number, you have my name, you have my email, you have anything. If they want to reach out, I'm more than happy to have a conversation with anybody. If they just want to sit there and vent and be angry and pissed off, if they want to sit there and fully, open up and whatever it is, right? I'm more than happy to help anybody I can with any of this stuff. And I'm not saying I can't help it like you. I'm not a psychologist, I'm not in mental health, but I've been through some of it, right? So I can relate a bit. I won't be able to relate to exactly what anybody else is going through, but again, it's an ear, it's a different ear. Sometimes people just need it. People just need to hear their own voice and talk about it. They don't need it. They don't need an answer. They don't need an explanation. But just having an ear, and I'm more than happy to do that. So I think, thank you for asking me to come on here and give me the opportunity to talk about this with you. It's fantastic.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's sweet of you, buddy. I'll make sure to, put your contact info into the show notes here, but
yeah,
again, thanks for helping on here and chopping it up with me.